Hazard communication, an employee's right to know. Learning objectives, provide a basic understanding of EGUSD's hazard communication program. Learn the importance of accurate labeling and safety data sheets. Learn how to respond in the event of a chemical spill or accidental release. What is hazard communication? It's known as the right to know law. Worker safety can be compromised through the improper handling of chemicals. Hazard communication determines the dangers of these chemicals you use on the job, tells you what these hazards are, and how to protect yourself from them. HazCom requirements. Training for all employees on the HazCom program. Manufacturer labels on every chemical container. Safety data sheets, SDS, for every chemical kept near chemical use area. Chemical labels. All chemicals must be properly labeled. OSHA Quick Card, Hazard Communication Standard labels. OSHA has updated the requirements of labeling of hazardous chemicals under its Hazard Communication Standards. As of June 1st, 2015, all labels will be required to have pictograms, a signal word, hazard and precautionary statements, the product identifier, and supplier identification. A sample revised HCS label identifying the required label elements is shown on the right. Supplemental information can also be provided on the label as needed. All chemicals must be properly labeled. Labels for a hazardous chemical must contain the name, address, and telephone number, product identifier, a signal word, hazard statements, precautionary statements, pictograms. They must include the name, address, and telephone number of the chemical and manufacturer, importer, or other responsible party. Product identifier, how the hazardous chemical is identified. This can be, but is not limited to, the chemical name, code number, or batch number. The manufacturer, importer, or distributor can decide the appropriate product identifier. The same product identifier must be both on the label and in Section 1 of the SDS. Signal words. There are only two words used as signal words, danger and warning. Danger is used for more severe hazards. Warning is used for less severe hazards. There will only be one signal word on the label, no matter how many hazards a chemical may have. Hazard statements. Describe the nature of the hazards of a chemical. For example, causes damage to kidneys through prolonged or repeated exposure when absorbed through the skin. All of the applicable hazard statements must appear on the label. The hazard statements are specific to the hazard classification categories, and chemical users should always see the same statement for the same hazards, no matter what the chemical is or who produces it. Precautionary statements. Describe recommended measures that should be taken to minimize or prevent adverse effects resulting from exposure to the hazardous chemical or improper storage or handling. There are 4 types of precautionary statements. Prevention, to minimize exposure. Response, in case of accidental spillage or exposure, emergency response, and first aid. Storage. Disposal. A label may include 1 or more pictograms. Some examples of pictograms are shown below. Health hazard, carcinogen, mutagenicity, reproductive toxicity, respiratory sensitizer, target organ toxicity, aspiration toxicity, flame, flammables, pyrophorics, self-heating, emits flammable gas, self-reactives, organic peroxides, exclamation mark, irritant, skin and eye, skin sensitizer, acute toxicity, harmful, narcotic effects, respiratory tract irritant, hazardous to ozone layer, non-mandatory. Safety data sheets. All chemicals must have a safety data sheet. Safety data sheet. Written or printed material concerning a hazardous chemical that is prepared in accordance with Section 5914G. The SDS includes information such as the property of each chemical, the physical health and environmental health hazards, protective measures, safety precautions for handling, storing, and transporting the chemical. The information contained in the SDS must be in English, although it may be in other languages as well. Sections 1 through 8 contain general information about the chemical, identification, hazards, composition, safe handling practices, emergency control measures, example, firefighting. This information should be helpful to those that need to get to the information quickly. Sections 9 through 11 and 16 contain other technical and scientific information, such as physical and chemical properties, stability and reactivity information, toxicological information, exposure control information, and other information including the date of preparation or last revision. The SDS must also state that no applicable information was found when the preparer does not find relevant information for any required element. Personal protective equipment. Personal protective equipment, PPE. Hazardous chemicals can be inhaled, ingested, or absorbed through the skin. When using hazardous chemicals, you are required to use the appropriate PPE as prescribed on the label and the SDS. Make sure the PPE fits and is not torn or broken. All hazardous chemicals must be properly stored. All hazardous chemicals must be properly stored according to the Hazard Communication Program. Chemical spill and material release. Procedures for chemical spill and material release. Call 911. Resist the urge to rush in. Others cannot be helped until the situation has been fully assessed. Assess the situation. What actions should be taken? Is an evacuation necessary? What can be done immediately? Understand the potential hazards. Secure the scene. Without entering the immediate hazard area, isolate the area. Assure the safety of the people and the environment. Keep people away from the scene and outside the safety perimeter. Notify supervisor. Be prepared to administer first aid. Know the risks of the chemicals and have neutralizing solutions available. Have supplies ready and available in case of a small spill or leak. Appropriate materials may be absorbent, 5-gallon container with lid, broom and dustpan, and PPE, personal protective equipment. Questions? Contact Risk Management at 916-686-7775 or email inquiries to rskmgtin@egusd.net.